Welcome, peeps. Welcome to the 3 Box. I'm here with the usual suspects. I'm here with Darius.
Oh, that's me. Hey, I'm back. I've been off for 2 weeks. It's live. It's live. How we doing?
I'm here with Eric
Hi, sister.
and Darius.
Guys, we have a special guest in the house. Oh, the big buck. From Randwick all the way to Parramatta. Mr. George or Jorge Atton in the house. How are you doing, George?
I'm good. Hello, everybody out there. Sorry, I'm going to speak closer. I'll get in trouble. Let's go.
George, how's things?
Things are really good. I had a good day today. Had a good lunch.
Not invited, I guess.
You were invited, you didn't show up.
No. No, thank you. So, how's your week, by the way?
Week's always good, man. I'm at the gym most days, so it's always good when you're on the mat. So
True. How about you, Dev? What's been happening?
Nothing.
I haven't seen you for a week or so.
I've
Hey,
been trying to recover from just getting smashed from jiu-jitsu or like for the whole month, and it's been hard on my body and stuff. So I've just
soft.
Nah.
You're talking to George. George will come up with those comments.
My cuticle was hurting, and then I had to get a haircut. And
How about you, E? What's been happening in your week?
Nothing, just training. So yeah.
I haven't been
Is this
training.
true? Has he been training?
I haven't been
I'm
there.
gonna have to check my roll call.
I haven't been training for a week. You know that, right?
Yeah, I
George
heard
didn't
you,
even
man.
notice. Sad.
It was actually quite peaceful.
Oh no, man! Nah, it's just recovery. Yeah, I need to
recovery week.
recover. Yeah, my buddies just goes. I need to recover badly.
I mean, I expected a more, not a better intro, but a more dramatic intro for George.
Dramatic. I was gonna say something.
I think he got nervous.
I really get nervous.
I got nervous, or you got nervous?
I got
You got
nervous
nervous.
because I got a lot of things that I wanted to say before the biggest intro for George, but I said, "Nah, make it simple." You know, I don't want to get gutted in the mat, so I just want to make sure.
Because I thought you were gonna say the legend from rugby union, the master of the sky hook. Like I thought you were gonna give
I
that
did.
to
I
the
had
baby
to.
hook.
No.
Yeah.
The baby hook.
The
Jace,
baby
he used to
hook.
play ball, one-on-one basketball. Jace, come on, let's go, let's do it.
So how about let's restructure things a little bit. So George, what were your first sports that you took up before you were a little bit more full-time on jiu-jitsu?
So I played 18 years of rugby. So I went to uni at 18, never played rugby. I always wanted to play rugby. I played rugby league, but then I went to uni and started playing rugby union, and that took a big chunk of my life. Sort of, it's probably it's big on my formative years. Like I learned a lot. I had some really good influences. And then sort of towards the back end of that, I started playing ultimate frisbee, which is sort of like a weird sort of sport to play, but I played a lot.
Frisbee.
Yeah.
That one.
How old were you when you were doing that, George?
So I must have been in my late 20s when I started playing ultimate frisbee. So
It's like AFL, right? Just
the best way to describe it is a cross between NFL and netball, where you want to score touchdowns by advancing the disc down the field. You can't run with it; you can only throw it. So
Okay.
it's a really fun game, and the main ingredient for that makes it really interesting is there's no referees. It's self-officiated.
so there's no tackle stuff.
There's no contact. There is like incidental contact, but it's self-officiated. So if I foul someone, Eric, he just calls foul, and then I either accept it and I take the penalty,
So there's no referee.
There's no referee, or I contest it. If I contest it, because we're contesting the call, it just goes back to where it came from. So if it was thrown to Eric and I fouled him, we restart down the field where it was.
How many times was there hands on heads? It's like no, I don't care.
Never.
You don't accept. Never.
I've only ever seen I played a lot, and I was never that good, but I played like national level, sort of B team level, and
You weren't that good. You played national.
yeah, that doesn't. You guys can play national.
Oh,
like, you know
okay.
what I mean, like the B team, we're the feeder team into the top team. So we had a team, and they would go to nationals, and we'd go with them, but we were just the punching bags for them. So
Okay.
it was It was fun, but I only saw one game where it really got heated, and that's what can spoil the game. Because there's a thing called spirit of the game, where we both have an agreement that we want to play. So sometimes you let things go because it sort of ruins the game. You don't want to, like travels. I got towards the end when I was a grumpy old man and playing, I was calling travels all the time. And you're a bit of a dick for doing it, sort of thing. It's not the point of the game. You're supposed to have. It's like you're having a sweat and throwing a bit of plastic around. Why get all uptight about it?
How about Union?
Union, I played a lot of Union. I was really lucky to have. I never played Union, and then I played in this team when I first year of uni, and they brought me in. And I was just literally brought in as an extra reserve. They had a really good prop, and after 3 games in that competition, you can't regrade. So once you're in Colts, the under-21s team,
that's it.
You're cemented in, and the guys that were above us in grade, they couldn't come down to help us out. And this guy broke his collarbone, and then they basically had to really quickly skill me up on how to play in the front row, which is a very technical position. And I had these coaches that sort of spent a fair bit of time on me getting. And in that year we got to the grand final. So we drew the grand final.
So did you do this as a part of when you were in uni, or just from high school, from all the way? Or?
So I played league through school, and then year 11, year 12, no sport, which drove me crazy. And then...
What? Year 11 and 12?
Yeah, for some reason. It was a new school, and they had a policy that it was just all about the HSC. And then I did Taekwondo before that as well.
What?
I was a brown belt in Taekwondo, red belt.
Huh? Red belt, George. Red belt. It's red belt.
Yeah, and when that was to year 10, and then year 11 I had to drop it. So, and I was a very active competitor in Taekwondo, and then I had to have 2 years off, and then I went back to Taekwondo for a little bit, and where I trained wasn't the same, and I didn't
change.
I didn't like it.
So being a Union player, George, which position did you play?
I played in the front row. So I started at loosehead, so number 1.
Yep.
And then as I got older, I moved across to 2, and then I finally got to tight head prop, which is the hardest position on the field because you have so much weight coming on from both sides.
So when you say you're in the loosehead, so front rower, right?
Yeah.
So you were the big
scrum.
boys. Literally.
There were bigger boys than me around, so I was. Yeah, sometimes I'd only be the 4th or 5th biggest guy on the team. So,
how many years you played as
18?
Wow.
I blew my ACL out after I think my fourth year when I was really going to have it's the first time I'd done a preseason, the first time I'd done weights. It was my year, and first game of the season I blew my ACL out.
And done. That's it.
That's pretty much, yeah. I took some bad options, didn't rehab properly, Yeah, so that was... But I kept playing great, like lower grades, and had a good time. Learned a lot of things.
Yep. What made you change, George? What made you change from, like, for example, I guess you did the T3B, I guess, from non-contact, and you went as a union. I guess you played when you're in high school, league, and union. Suddenly, a sudden change. I guess you got your background in Taekwondo. Sudden change to be a Jiu-Jitsu. What made you...
So this is a funny story. I was playing at Randwick, and I really loved Randwick. It was my first club was Hawkesbury Ag College. That was where I really played my best football. I had the best times. My fondest memories of rugby are there. So that's my club, and it's and when I was getting married, we moved out to Randwick, and Randwick had a reputation of being snobs, and I played at a couple other clubs that I won't mention, but. When I went to Randwick, I felt really welcomed. People, first graders, guys, wallabies, guys that played for Australia, and all went out of their way to
help you out.
Just to welcome me, just to say, hey, how you going? New to the club, and I found it really refreshing. And then, so I played there for a couple of years, and Randwick's a young man's club, so I was getting towards the end of. I played 3-4 years there. And I was 36, and I was the oldest guy by about 12 years.
So till your 30s, you're still playing football?
18 to about 36.
Wow, man.
So I was the oldest guy there, which is unusual at clubs. Most clubs have old dinosaurs like me running around, sort of sharing our sort of knowledge a little bit. Anyway, I was playing half a game. I was still having fun, but I was thinking I'm getting pretty close to the end. I haven't retired officially. I'm still available for selection. But
So you wanted.
I'm still available.
So you're hoping to be in the national team.
If maybe smallpox or something happens, and they.
So you are.
I haven't retired. Okay, so. I can't say the words I've retired. So anyway, I knew I was coming to the end of me playing a lot of rugby. I was only getting half a game. So I was sharing a spot with a guy, and he was good, a young up and coming prop, and I switched clubs. And it's a bit of it's almost a no-no to leave your club.
Controversy, yep.
So I asked for a transfer and they gave it to me, and I went to play Subbies, which is a step down from where I was, and it was an old rival club of mine from Hawkesbury Ag days, and it was really good. I was getting like a game and a half, and I was having really good fun. I was playing a lot of footy. I knew I probably had another few more games in me. The last game of the season, I needed to lift home, and we were at Forest, and there was someone goes, "Oh yeah, Heno lives in
Alex Bano.
Heno. Paul Henningham.
Yeah.
He lives in Randwick. He can give you a lift." And then we start talking in the car, and it turns out that when I was at my peak and we're about the same age, we played against each other at least 4 times, where we would have been, both teams were very competitive at that point in time, going back, 15 years. And so we played actually head to head.
Okay.
And I didn't remember him, he didn't remember me, but we both in those teams. Anyway, we're talking in the car, and we're talking about how we're both coming towards the end of our careers, and we're looking for something to do. And he mentioned jiu-jitsu. Wow. Just mentioned it. And I remember seeing an article in the Southern Courier, the newspaper, the local newspaper, about jiu-jitsu in the area. And I thought, anyway, he planted that seed, and then I started Googling it. And Google wasn't as good then, and with the social sort of exposure wasn't there. And anyway, I couldn't find it. And I finally found the school. I went and saw my first class. I took my mate up with me, another rugby guy with me. Went upstairs, sat down, watched these guys. It was in Maroubra Junction.
Okay, so it's still in the old place.
The old place in Maroubra Junction, upstairs, above a Thai restaurant. Like, it's this little, it wasn't very big. It would have been maybe 80 square meters of mats. And these guys were just wrestling to kill each other. It was the best. There was no gi.
So
and I'm looking, and I sat down, and my eyes were like, oh man,
this is for you.
And Marcus Navell was taking classes. Bruno was on holidays, and he came over and we had a chat, and he goes, man, this is like the second last class of the year. Come back January 4th.
Oh, so it wasn't the last year, yeah.
And I'm like, but I want to go now. Like, this is. And but when I walked out of there, I said to myself, I'm going to get my black belt in this. I just knew it was such a good, it was very similar to rugby, especially the tight forward play, very similar sort of contest, and the same sort of technicality, but still being very physical, where you sort of got to do everything right. But yeah, that was how anyways, I started training in the new year, and I was just addicted instantly. I think you guys know that feeling of just, straight away that this is what you wanted to do.
Sure.
And then I was thinking, you know what? I should find out if I can get Paul's number. I didn't even have his phone number. And anyway, that week I'm going up the stairs and he's already up there. He'd been training all this time. I'd missed him. He'd got 2 months. He basically went from that day we talked about it, he started training. So he had about probably 6 weeks on me but that's how I started. That's how jiu-jitsu for me got introduced.
Now the question is, we've heard the story meeting you with Jason. What's your own version of meeting Jason?
So the funny thing, Jason loves that story, and I'm not going to say it's not true. I'll just say maybe he imagined it. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
Was it the squinting of the eyes?
I was definitely leaving because by this stage I was training with Paul a lot because we lived around the corner from each other, so we were getting lifts together, and I do remember someone reversing back, but I don't remember the whole, he's going to bash me. So the funny thing about me and Jace though is we have this. I don't know if you talked about it, the connection that we've had.
Yes, it is.
And so I went to school with a couple of Timorese guys. and they're his cousins, and we didn't know. And so I'm sitting down. The first time I really talked to Jason, I thought he was Aboriginal. What's so funny about it? He's brown, like, you know, shiny head, and he
had hair.
He never had hair. He's never had hair.
Jace, you had hair. I saw your photo. No, you had hair, right?
No, that was when he was 12 or something. Anyway, he comes up and we're talking on the bench. It's a similar vibe to what we've got here. This is Maroubra Junction, little small little bench. And I go, oh man, I thought you were Aboriginal. No, I'm too big. I go, oh, cool. And I said, do you know Johnny Crascaleo? Right?
A small world, yeah.
And he goes, yeah, it's my cousin. Like, you know, Islanders, everyone's cousins. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. And then, so Johnny's a good friend of mine. He's up in Darwin now, but, if Johnny, if you listen to this, I still owe you a punch. Okay? I was on a bus annoying him one day when we were I think we were year 10 or year 9. He was a boxing champ, right?
Well, okay.
A little, tiny guy. And I annoyed him and he just lost his mind and punched me. And I just smiled a bit. So, Johnny, I owe you a punch. Anyway, so we start talking. And so that's one connection, Johnny Crascaleo. And then I did a little bit of kickboxing at a school in Liverpool. A couple of my friends trained there. And there's a guy called Sifu Tony El Da Costa. And he's Timorese. And yeah, Jace trained with him as well. So there's that little connection there. And then one of his cousins I went to school with as well, me and Jace were having dinner one day. This is years ago. And we're sitting in Churrasco. And I look across the room and there's this guy and I go, that's Mateus. And Jason couldn't see him because he's behind him. And he turns around and it's his cousin, Mateus Rosa. Anyway, we know each other and we're just like this small little thing, but we never met. Like this was, 20 years while I was at school, and then we never actually met in this time. But we're connected.
Yes,
but we have this connection, this weird sort of Timorese sort of lock. So
now the question is, but because you mentioned earlier on, I picked it up, you said Liverpool, then suddenly you grew up. Did you grow up in Liverpool or Randwick?
I was in the hood in Liverpool. I was in Heckenberg. That's where I grew
Where's
up.
Heckenberg?
I don't know. Where's
Above Miller.
That's Cambridge.
Between Mount Pritchard. Nah.
I know where Mount Pritchard is. So.
Yeah, you know where the hill is? That little top bit's Heckenberg. It's only like at 6 streets. It was Housing Commission. This is another thing Jason and I share in common. We sort of immigrants, grew up in Housing Commission, sort of, not that we were poor, but we weren't wealthy. Our parents did their best. So we've got that similar sort of mindset as well, where we sort of come in and
hungry.
And I know he describes it as a hunger, but it's just,
it's just life.
We know, yeah, it's life. But we know, like, I've seen, one thing that I've seen is people take the wrong path. I've seen people make a choice that takes them the wrong way. And I think Jay says as well, we talk about this all the time, like, and, part of our
life,
why we sort of like having the gym, one of the reasons we have is just to give people the option to sort of, look here, like it's very sort of subtle, but it's a really positive environment for people to be in. And if you're thinking going left, maybe you should stay right over here with us. Just.
You mentioned last time you did IT.
Yeah. So as a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I went to uni a few times, and
the best times.
It was the best times, but also
party goer.
I sort of had a few cracks at getting a degree. I never graduated, so I learnt a lot. That's the other thing. I think this is sometimes people sort of, a lot of the stuff that I learned, especially my first crack at degree at Hawkesbury, I did do a lot of partying, but I did learn a lot. I learned
PhD in partying.
One thing I learned was systems thinking, which is really interesting. And my friends were doing a whole degree on them, but just talking to them about it was really fascinating, the whole idea. And then that really, systems thinking really resonated with me, and it's something that I've used a lot.
Can you expand on that?
So systems thinking is basically everything's a system within a system. So
Matrix?
No, it's not like that. It's like, just say like this system here, right? So this microphone is within the system of the whole unit here, but you could talk about the microphone by itself and go deep into the microphone, or you can just talk about the microphone being a microphone, or you can talk about everything deep, and then you can talk about the wires. Everything's a system within a system, and everything relates. So it's like a cog inside a cog inside a cog. You can look at all the different cogs independently, or you can look at the whole thing, and one cog can affect all the cogs and you've got to understand how that works. So in jiu-jitsu, it's really important to understand systems
The
thinking.
system itself.
I saw you doing security in the city.
Yeah.
How did that begin?
So I went to uni, in and out, I worked in a bottle shop, and then I started working with a point of sale system, and that sort of, I backdoored my way into point of sale and then sort of managing a system, and then I ended up getting a job at Gowings, a big retailer, and then I got made redundant because it went broke.
Yeah.
And then,
What year was that? Goings?
Yeah, Gowings.
Yeah.
And Tony Wright, one of our members, he was actually one of the guys that went in and sort of wound it up. And then around that same time, Lola was coming, our first baby. So, and I always had this thing at the back of my head that I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad. I didn't want to send my kids to daycare. I just felt
Why?
I just think it's expensive,
Connection.
and you're
also.
paying someone to raise your kids. I went to 2 days of daycare like later on, but it was mainly for them to socialize and for that sort of preschool effect to get, so they start and give me sort of a bit of respite, I suppose. But I always had it in my head that's what I wanted to do. Even from a young kid, I think I wanted to, like, I sort of was aiming for this. And I did do security when I was at uni at one stage, and I knew the owner of the company, and I just wanted somewhere I could work Friday, Saturday nights and just get 20 hours in on the weekend. That should give me enough sort of pocket money to survive. And that's how I got into security. And I got thrown into the deep end down the rocks. And it was supposed to be a nice, quiet venue. And I was there for 12 years doing that. The
Security.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but it took a bit of toll. Like in the end, I wasn't doing jiu-jitsu at that stage. I probably had maybe a year of security about jiu-jitsu. And one day, this was another reason I started doing jiu-jitsu, was I ended up on the ground. There was like it was nothing. It was just
your security
just
gig.
yeah. It was just
Okay.
we were in the pub and some big guy carried on, and I ended up on the ground, and I realized I knew nothing. Like nothing happened to me. The guy got taken away, but it was just that thought in my head that I really knew nothing on the ground was there in the back of my mind. And I was just like, I really need to do something. If I'm going to do this for a while, I need to know something.
The in and out. Yep.
So,
The in and out.
so that's how that's all my jobs in like one foul swoop.
Now full time a coach.
Yeah, I don't
great.
really consider a job either. Like that's the other thing. Like doing jiu-jitsu is not a job. It's, I'd do it for free. If I was rich, I'd do it for free. Like I really believe in jiu-jitsu as a thing for everybody.
sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to have that. The whole thing, like the whole community. That's
true.
It's an important thing for people. Like I can see the difference we can make in people's lives. So without sounding like a dick.
There you go. That's the answer. Now, moving forward, I found out, I think this a few weeks ago with you, Dev.
What?
We were discussing about, we got George. And I said, what kind of topic does George like? Remember we were discussing about...
yeah.
Oh, here we go.
I can't believe you, George. You're one of those guys.
One of those.
One of
guys.
those conspiracy theories.
See how he smiles? George, he only
because
smiles.
now I'm thinking about system after the system. Now,
Yeah. Look, I wrote it down. I like the system within the system. I think I'm going to apply that to everything.
So you start doing mind maps. So you start connecting positions to positions and movement to movements, and that gets you thinking in that terms. And you start.
Yeah.
So, but I think
Really
it's important.
interesting.
It's important to. It helps you. It helps you try to connect positions, and it's really interesting how the mind works. Sometimes you need that to solidify the connections, and your brain does a lot of pre-processing. Like, I don't think we really have even touched. Like the research doesn't really touch the surface on how much we pre-process, and like dreams. They think dreaming is really important for skill acquisition.
Well, they say dreams are the birthplace of thought.
Have you seen that on Matthew Walker talks about
Yeah.
the
You brought it up to me.
yeah, the rats are solving a maze in their dreams at 20 times the speed they normally would be thinking. So the brain is going through this process where it's, you know, obviously doing something that we're totally unaware of while we're in our sleep. I was teaching this guy a private. He booked me in for 10 privates. And he was a fly-in, fly-out guy that he just didn't have time. And he had 2 weeks off. And I want to learn jiu-jitsu in 2 weeks. I'm like, all right. So the first private was pretty bad. You don't know the guy, you just don't get to know each other. It wasn't a great private. I just sort of I try to get inside the person's head so I can best teach them. So I sort of want to interface with them. And the second private was equally as bad. And the third private.
So if you want privates with George,
The third private, I was thinking I'm going to have to give this guy his money back because I can't teach him.
Wow.
you couldn't
And
get into his mind?
I just couldn't. I don't know what it was. And I mean, the thing is, as you're learning to teach jiu-jitsu, it's the same as you're learning jiu-jitsu. It's a process. You make mistakes and you get better and improve. Anyway, so I'm literally going like, and really try not to let my frustrations out, so that because the person's going to feel that, and then they're going to lock up, and it's going to be even harder to teach them. But we sort of finished up a little bit early, so I said, you know what, this is what we're doing tomorrow, and I showed him like 2 or 3 things that we're going to do tomorrow, and we came back the next day, and it was like a different person. Like the private was so good. And I said afterwards, I said, listen, did you go home and practice or research, or what did you do different? Nothing. And he just said, I just went home. I've got all these, I've got 2 weeks off and I've just got all these things to do. And it's just go, go, go. And it was just obvious that, and then from then on, that's what I did. I preloaded him for each day for the next day. And the next 7 were amazing. The next 7 privates were like, but the pre-processing that must have been going on in his head, you know, like he went from like not being able to do forward rolls to like I was getting him to do all my platters and triangles and arm bars like that. Like I'm just like, but it was all from just preloading him, and he's letting his brain percolate overnight. Okay, yep. And then he was, you know, it was very interesting. That was sort of eye-opening for me as a coach.
So you touched on that a little bit with the mind and whatnot. As I was doing research, they say that your brain goes through 2 things. You got the conscious side and the subconscious side.
Yeah.
Okay, and conscious clearly is when you're trying to learn a skill, is you're doing something that you're not used to, and then over time with practice and whatnot, that gets stored into subconscious. Is that essentially what happened to this guy?
Yeah, it must be. I mean, and then listening to that sort of, and reading the book, the Why We Sleep book, there's that transfer between that conscious memory and then in the dream stage, it gets written in somewhere else. I think that must happen. And that short-term memory, then it gets into that long-term memory, and then we access that long-term memory. But it's definitely, like I've seen it. It happens. Like it's not, like that guy was just a perfect example of, because nothing changed. The only thing that changed was I gave him like, and it was really, really like, it wasn't like I went in a whole lot of detail. I just said, this is what I want to do. I just showed him once or twice. And that was it. And then he was, but the private, the next day was just bang, bang, bang. He just got it.
So about a month ago, when we did our first or second episode here, you told me you were quite angry. And I was like, why are you angry, George? And then you just go, bro, fake news.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do. We have
Fire
to do,
away, George.
Let's. I think we've got to save our fire for.
Is this another conspiracy
I think
theory?
it's going to be another. I think this is going to be a whole new.
I think
we could talk for hours on this.
No, come on, George. Well, okay, so let's start with something.
What's fake news? Are we talking about clickbait?
Let's talk about what really annoyed me, and we'll just brush over it.
That's a big brush. This is going to be a big brush.
Here we go.
Sorry, guys. So it was you're talking about in a sec. We'll talk about the 100 arsonists that were arrested during the bushfire, and you guys were I read that. And it was one storyline in in a Murdoch Media newspaper, and they have an agenda, and they're trying to downplay the anthropomorphic or anthropocentric climate change. Okay, so that means that
that's a big word for you right now, George.
Anthro just means man-made, man-made,
Get a
man-made,
keyboard so that way.
man-made. So
Man-made.
basically,
Okay,
so
I get it.
they basically they try to muddy any information that's out there. They just try to create as much doubt as they can about something that's really, really obviously happening. So they'll go and say, oh, there was 100 arsonists. The reason we've got the worst fire season ever is the 100 arsonists. Right? The 100 arsonists didn't even happen.
So it doesn't exist.
They manipulated the information. It's not real. Like, that's not what caused the fires. I think there were 2 fires caused by arson out of all the fires over the fire season. But this fake news annoys me a lot. And the thing is, it's the same as the stuff that happens on Facebook when someone will put that rubbish out there, like that poor kid, and they started saying he was 18, you know, that little kid that was getting bullied.
Braden.
And then someone went off and said he was 18, and people believe it. And I'm like,
Who said it was 18?
Yeah,
there was
it
a thing on Facebook.
Yeah,
He doesn't look 18.
No,
No,
but this
someone, they had a
this is how it
photo.
happens.
Yeah.
Oh.
And people start believing it, and you know, they don't have. There's no critical thought about why is someone telling me this? Why is this information coming out now? What's their angle? Why are they saying this to me? So that's why it sort of annoyed me, because even like just before that story came out, there was one of the executives from Murdoch resigned because of the way that they were covering the environmental reporting, and it was. She basically said that they were being mischievous the way they do it. So that's why I got annoyed. That was one reason I got annoyed.
Before we go to other fake news, right? I wanna ask.
We're going to talk about jiu-jitsu.
I want to ask, right? Because your mindset, I want to know how you view the world, because you've used a few words like critical thinking, and then you said system within a system.
Yeah.
So you're giving like just snippets of how you think about the world and how you see the world, right?
Yeah.
But your mindset, how do you put it all together so that, like you said, fake news, you hate it. It pisses you off, right?
Like, makes you really angry.
But then you got systems. You got systems that you put them in compartments and that. How would you describe this? Like, because there's some people that are just like full of energy, and they like Jason's just like he throws a lot of positive energy into one direction, and then it just momentum takes him.
Right.
You're more. You're like, when I first met you, you were like, I'll take it as it comes. Like but at the same time, you still move forward. So I don't know how you would describe that.
So I'm very skeptical about everything. I'm very evidence-based. And I like to think about things a lot. So I'm a big, I was pretty lucky to have some of the teachers I've had in my life. And one thing they taught me was context and subtext. So context is what someone's telling you, and subtext is the reason why someone's telling you.
Say that. Can you say that again?
So context is what they're telling you.
Context
And then
is what they're telling
it's
you.
like Eric, your muscles look good today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Subtext?
The subtext is why am I doing this? Why am I telling Eric he's got good muscles? Why am I sucking up to him? Like,
So the reason behind
behind things. And I think subtext is not, it's a sort of nuanced thing that people don't get into, and they don't look into the whys. Why is that? Why is that someone saying that to me? Why are they? Why is Darius brushing his hair that way? Why? I'm always thinking about the whys. I always think why. Why is that? Why is that person telling me that thing?
Have you always been a skeptic?
Yeah.
Your whole life?
Yeah.
How do you sleep, George, with that much, like that type of thought process? Because essentially you're breaking things down constantly, right? That's what we're getting here.
Or is it in the pre-brain?
No. No. I mean,
It's a fake brain.
you've got to be able to switch your brain off. So that sometimes it can be harder. I find the hardest time for me to sleep would be after training really hard. My adrenaline's really up. That's hard for me to sleep. After I've taught a really good class, Even though I didn't do the class, I taught a really good class. I'm pumped. It takes a couple
Are
hours.
you like, yeah, George, you did well today? Is that kind of is that
I
way?
felt when he's in that zone.
I've
experienced it.
I love, like, I've like, just say something like the omoplata, right? For some reason, the omoplata is so hard for people to get.
That's true.
And then I taught it this time round, and everyone's nailing it. Like, everyone's hitting the omoplata. The movement's right. They're using all the right angles. And I'm like, man, that's awesome.
So George, for somebody that doesn't know the omoplata, can you just describe that?
So it's basically a shoulder lock where you spin around and use your legs to isolate the sort of the trap and shoulder, and the arm ends up like in a key lock, a bend behind the back, and then you use your hips to break the shoulder. Pop. Gently.
See, this
that's
one.
the gentle art.
We're back
And this is the other thing that annoyed me. There's one more thing I remember.
Yes.
So when you guys were,
Get it off your chest, George. Get it off.
so the interpretation of the gentle art.
I want people to.
yes.
I want
Fire
people to
away,
hear
fire
this.
away, fire away.
So the gentle art comes. I think gentle's the wrong phrasing. It's like more like smooth. It's smooth, right? But it's because you're giving the person an option to tap. Like, I put you in a choke and I put you to sleep gently, but I also give you the option to 3 taps and it's over. I let you go, rather than like, I'm going to knock you out, or if it was in a battlefield, I'm going to put a sword through you. I'm giving you the option to concede, and as gentlemen, I won, and then I didn't damage you, and you can go on your merry way, and I won, and we've conceded.
So you're saying the catch and release method?
It's not catch and release. I'm saying that I'm giving you the option to tap. You don't have to tap. You can let me break your arm, but as soon as you tap, I'm going to let you go.
So